How many times to this point have we seen that the statues from the old world, they don't have their hands anymore? The stories tell us that the old world, some individuals had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Should we take this further, with the first mention of giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes appears in ancient texts, the Bible, and various mythologies, where we have shown so many times that these so-called myths are so much more factual than the mainstream narrative that we have all been told. One of the most famous references comes from the book of 2 Samuel in the Old Testament, which mentions a giant named Ishbi-Benob, who was described as having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, a descendant of the Nephilim, a race of giants mentioned earlier in Genesis, with statues from the old world exposing the truth, showing the depictions of the past, destroyed so many times, chopping the hands off over and over, chopping the feet off. And when they don't do this, it exposes so much. Just like we saw in episode 109. All of this, in my opinion, all based on my research. You are always free to think whatever you'd like. I've said this since the very beginning. That being said, let's keep going. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, meaning 24 fingers and toes in total. And he was also born to the giant. All of this is a myth. Are you sure? With 7 full books documented as being removed from the Protestant Bible. 7 full books removed, along with additional parts of other books, such as Esther and Daniel, all excluded. And we all know that it wasn't just 7. What was being removed changed. I'm not speaking to the 7 books that were removed. I am so much more interested in if there was more than 7 at this point. I believe that this book, the Bible, is directly from the old world, telling all of us, admitting that this incredible book has been altered. So let's turn this up a notch. Polydactyly is the condition of having extra fingers or toes. A condition? Or is this the giants, the Nephilim from the old world, the previous civilization? Egypt, where some mummies found in high-status tombs were reported to have extra digits. Finding mummies with extra digits in Thebes, the ancient capital of Egypt. Archaeologists discovered a tomb. Was it just one? You tell me. A tomb belonging to a royal or high-ranking individual. The Nephilim? I believe so. The tomb contained mummified remains with unusual characteristics, including extra fingers and extra toes. This is unbelievable. Is this what we are all being blocked off from? That the Nephilim were the leaders of the old world? Does the extra finger, the extra toe, does this expose that? And this is why the statues of all of them are all removed today. I believe that this is the case. Like I've said since the beginning, I don't believe that this is thousands of years ago. I believe that this was only a few hundred years ago. And it's getting clearer and clearer. Mummies from the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, which were discovered in our timeline yet again, just like it is every single time. The late 19th and early 20th centuries have been examined for unusual traits, like polydactyly, 6 fingers, 6 toes, with modern archaeological excavations reporting finding remains of individuals with extra digits in the tombs. I believe that we fully understand why these statues of the past are deliberately destroyed, chopping the heads, the hands, and the feet off of all of them perfectly with a saw all over the world, because we all know that this isn't just in Egypt. The mound builders of North America, specifically Ohio, Illinois, and the Mississippi River Valley. This research is incredible, and it all fits together over and over like a puzzle. I believe this is all to find the truth. It's all laid out there for us to find it. if you begin to put the pieces together and know exactly what you're looking for, it all begins to tell a story, an incredible story, the true history, while at the same time exposing the false narrative. In episode 45, we went on top of the Cahokia mounds. This was like 66 weeks after episode 111. 66 weeks later, we found the next puzzle piece to this location in southern Illinois, USA, that archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of human burials, with hundreds more burials being discovered across the other mounds. And the exact numbers vary due to not completing the excavation. They stopped excavating the site. We know this from episode 111 for this location. Not only were these people found underneath this supposed dirt pile that we all know is a temple covered by grass, but we find something incredible about these people that are still here at this site today. And I believe that we've found the reason that they stopped digging, all to preserve their narrative. The Cahokia Mounds, one of the largest sites in the Americas that we've found so far, has yielded numerous burial mounds and remains, with some reports, though not extensively documented, of course. These reports documented that there are skeletons buried at the Cahokia Mounds with extra digits, telling all of us that this Mississippian culture viewed these individuals with extra digits, extra fingers and extra toes, as possessing special significance or power. We have just exposed that the Nephilim were in Illinois, USA, and it's looking like they're still possibly buried there today, 2 feet underneath the dirt, like we have shown. The mounds at Cahokia were used for ceremonial and burial purposes. We have also shown they were for sacrificial purposes, showing that we obviously don't know what the Nephilim were up to. Possibly not great things. With some of the skeletons found associated with elite figures, just like we saw in Egypt, indicating that polydactyly was seen as a sign of strength or divinity. You're not seeing these individuals buried with a chisel next to them. These individuals with 6 fingers and 6 toes, they weren't found with a rake next to them. They weren't off making pottery. These were the leaders. They were in charge. And I believe that we've fully exposed this. And it all started with having open eyes, seeing that they would chop the hands off of the statues, understanding that the statues that we all see today are actually depictions of the past and not just myth. And then that evolved into seeing that their hands and feet were also removed perfectly, over and over. And now we're finding evidence that they have found the leaders of the past, the leaders of the old world. 6 fingers, 6 toes, and they were giants, and they are being hidden from us today, telling us that they are preserving the site when they are just preserving their narrative, just like we saw in 1967. They found these individuals buried, mass graves, and then they stopped in 1971. It's very clear at this point that the land that we all live on is filled with such a different story than what we have all been told. A controlled narrative, a molded one, to fit into this ridiculous timeline that we've all been given. Understanding that a giant race was here, and they had 6 fingers and 6 toes. A race that is documented. These individuals have been found, and we know their locations. And trust me, we are just getting started. There are so many more. The Nephilim explains so much about the old world, and it opens up a brand new door. It possibly explains how things were actually constructed. A much more logical explanation for the pyramids of Giza is that there were actually bigger people here. It would just make a lot more sense that bigger people with more fingers and more toes, with more knowledge of this place that we live, built this. This shows that constructing the Milan Cathedral, the Cologne Cathedral, with a donkey and a chisel, with no lights on, dirt roads, and no toilet paper until the 1800s, doesn't make logical sense. This story is done. The history that we've all been told is in the past. It is now a myth, especially when we go to Ohio. The Adena Mound, located in Adams County, USA, where they excavated the burial site. and it revealed the remains of individuals with extra digits. Elite status yet again, where the Cherokee called them the Moon People. The Utes and the Paiutes spoke of a hideous race of cannibals, 10 feet tall, living in caves. Are these caves, or are these tunnels? And the Choctaw also have an account of the race of giants that first colonized the Ohio Valley. This is all in the USA. Cushman then recounts the discovery in 1880 at a burial mound near Plano, Texas, of human bones of enormous size. The jawbones so large as to slip over the face of a man with ease, with many historians speculating that they were the builders of the Adena Mounds, the place that they found the six-finger, six-toe individuals. Multiple sources, all connecting back to this location. The Cherokee, calling them the Moon People. I've had so many requests asking me to go into the Cherokee and do some research. Well, here we go. According to the Cherokee stories, the Moon People are described as large, powerful beings who were considered giants with extraordinary abilities. These Moon People, which I believe are the Nephilim, were said to ascend towards the moon, where they continued to watch over the earth. The Watchers. We are connecting massive dots today. Yes, the Watchers. These are the parents of the Nephilim in the Bible. In the Bible, the Watchers were angels that were sent to earth to watch over the humans. Then they fell in love with the women and had children with them. The children were the Nephilim, the offspring. And these Nephilim were described as savage giants that endangered humanity. The Moon People, in Cherokee stories, then ascended towards the moon to continue watching over the earth, often seen as ancient guardians of the world, giants, suggesting that the giants were so powerful that they could no longer remain on earth and were sent back to the moon. And then we find them here, buried. And in my opinion, this is proof of their existence. Finding the six fingers, the six toes, jaws that could go over a human head, and then not giving us any photographs of them, and just relying on written reports and sketches. We all know that we were given the camera back in the 1800s. So when they found them in the 1970s at the Cahokia Mounds in southern Illinois, this would not have been an issue to take a picture of it, telling us that photographic techniques were not as advanced or commonly used in archaeological practice. This is a bunch of nonsense, an excuse to keep these findings hidden and out of the mainstream narrative. This is exactly why they stopped excavating the site in 1971. This is unbelievable. Local legends describe these individuals as giants or people of great power. In several mounds, the archaeologists uncovered skeletons with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 on each foot. The individuals appeared to be of large size. Again, we see the depictions all over the world. They don't design the entire thing perfectly and then accidentally put an extra finger on both hands. That's not what happened. This was done on purpose. So when someone has polydactyly, this can mean that they have 6 fingers on one hand and the other hand has 5 fingers and both feet have 5 toes. It could also mean that both hands have 6 fingers and both feet have 6 toes. So to be more specific and attack this even further, we have to understand that we only want to research the instances where it's 6 fingers and 6 toes on both hands and both feet. This is polydactyly, but it is more specifically called hexadactyly. And hexadactyly means they have 6 fingers and 6 toes on both hands and both feet. And what I find extremely interesting is that people are still born with this today. It's extremely rare. with 1 in 1 million births, or only 140 people a year worldwide. They are born with this. So when we see it all over the world, the powerful giant old world figures in every continent, and they are being discovered as the leaders. This is not a common trait today at all. And there were less people back then, we are told. Yet there are so many instances where people have 6 fingers and 6 toes, and they are the leaders, and they are also giants, showing that this group, in my opinion, this is the Nephilim, they are gone. And there were so many more of them here in the past being around 500 years ago, in my opinion. I personally believe that this group did leave, with some dying from the catastrophic event that took place. The event that melted buildings. The event that covered this place with mud. But I also believe that their DNA lives on, a very small amount. I believe these 140 people per year, they might just have traces of this dominant trait. And so many times we saw that the head, the arms, the hands and the feet were removed from the depictions of our true past, the old world statues. And we see they are so deliberately removed, a perfect cut over and over. We always speculated that it was hiding more. And I believe today that we have fully exposed what it was hiding all along. Hiding that the Nephilim were here and extremely involved in the way that things were done. The leaders in every continent, I believe that we have opened up a brand new door that explains so much more about where we are. And I will never look at a statue without a head, without its feet, and without its hands the same ever again. One thing we can't overlook is how these traits, 6 fingers, 6 toes, and towering size, weren't just physical. They symbolize something so much deeper. Power, or even a connection to forces beyond this world, as we were told with the moon people, or the watchers. Across so many cultures, these individuals weren't just leaders. They were gods, warriors, and builders. Their influence shaped everything, including the massive architecture that's still here today. What if the missing hands and feet on these statues weren't just about hiding the truth, but also about erasing a lineage, erasing who once ruled and what they were capable of? It's not just about what's missing, it's about what they don't want us to see. This isn't just history we're uncovering. It's a blueprint to understanding what they don't want us to know. The Nephilim were here, and that changes everything. The Valley of Peace, located in the holy city of Nayav, Iraq. It is the largest cemetery in the world, covering 1,485.5 acres and contains more than 6 million bodies, where burials have just been going on, we're told, for over 1,400 years, and is also pinned as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This cemetery, in my opinion, is a cemetery from the old world. The previous civilization was buried right here, where today we see that 50,000 new bodies are buried right here annually, every year, with other sources stating that over 100,000 new graves are added each year. So either way, there's a lot of people. And I believe all of this is done to hide what was once there, back just 300 years. I believe before 300 years ago, this was not happening. And these 50 to 100,000 brand new bodies being buried there annually, this is a new thing. With ancient artifacts and structures uncovered in the vicinity, all of this is linked to the pre-Islamic period. This is the old world, the previous civilization, a very powerful, advanced group of people. We are the finders. We're finding all of this technology, their texts, buried with the most important people of the past. There are also reports of ancient tombs and cemetery complexes. The cemetery contains sacred tombs and mausoleums or significant figures. These sites have restricted access to preserve the mainstream narrative, where only certain individuals or groups may be allowed to visit. Once again, Episode 107, Off Limits to the Public, Part 1. Anytime there's something significant, something that would change the mainstream narrative, the story that we've all been told, they simply just say, no, the public is not allowed to see it. It's off limits, restricted, to preserve whatever it is. Where we know what preserving means. They're preserving their story. And that was just good enough for all of us for so long. Telling us that they were preserving the items, preserving the site, or whatever else is inside. When we all know now that they are preserving, they are protecting the mainstream history. The history that we were all told. All over the world, in every single country, we see the same exact thing. Given the historical and archaeological significance, certain sections of the valley, especially those that contain ancient tombs, artifacts, or historical remains, are all off limits to the general public. All of us, you and me. This is all to protect the integrity of the site. No, all to protect and prevent damage to valuable artifacts and structures. No, no, no. This is to protect what is there. If what they're supposedly protecting and preserving was all exposed, it would change the world in a second. And we all know it. Whatever is blocked off from the public is something significant, something that doesn't fit in with what we've been told. How can we all read the mainstream history book and fully trust it when so much is being blocked off from all of us? We don't get to go see all of the information. We don't get to go in there and verify all of the information. And at this point, everybody in the world has to understand that if we are not shown all of the information, all of the sites, all of the texts that have been found, all of the tablets, all of the artifacts, and no, not just the pottery, then we all have to continue to ask questions, at the very minimum. Archaeological excavations, or exploration areas, where significant historical artifacts are being uncovered. This is the point that the camera needs to be installed for everybody to see, so that their story can be fully transparent and trustworthy. But instead, this is the exact point that they go on to say are typically closed to the public, all to prevent interference and preserve the site, preserve whatever they found. Wouldn't they just want to put a camera in there to be fully transparent, to show us that what they're telling us is true? Why are they preserving all of these things and not showing the public over and over? Where we go on to see that certain ancient tombs, particularly those of historical or religious significance, may be restricted in order to protect the integrity of the graves. In some cases, preservation efforts may require limiting access to certain areas to prevent damage from weather, even though they tell us that it's been fine for centuries. Human interference or natural decay. No, no, and no. This is not working anymore, and we are just getting started when we see that a notable discovery was the uncovering of a massive necropolis at the site, dating back to pre-Islamic times. This is the old world. A necropolis is a cemetery, especially a large one, belonging to an ancient city, the old world, where we have an entire series on this called Under the Necropolis. So these new people that are being buried here are just being buried around this massive necropolis. They're being buried around the old world. And remember, this is a massive necropolis. We already know that a necropolis is a cemetery, especially a large one. So for them to add in there that this is a massive necropolis is very telling. Containing royal tombs and ancient inscriptions. This section of the cemetery, the massive necropolis, had been previously unknown or inaccessible and was, of course, found again in our timeline. Found in the 20th century, the 1900s, during excavations and modern archaeological surveys. Now that we know that there is a massive necropolis at this site that they just found, it's time to go deeper. uncovering a massive necropolis containing royal tombs and ancient inscriptions. All of this found in the 1900s, the 20th century, over and over and over. Our timeline. We are correct. We know exactly what to look for. We are pinning this down and exposing the truth to the world. We are showing sites that have been just hiding in plain sight for so long. We're showing that the old world was massive, and they've just been buried right below our feet for all this time, preserved, or simply not found yet. Our timeline has just began in the scheme of things. There is still so much more to be found, including at Cahokia, finding the Nephilim and leaving it alone after 1971, ignoring that they found six-fingered giants, just like we showed in our last few episodes, which is incredible. Massive giants found with 6 fingers and 6 toes from 1967 to 1971, and then never talked about again, and then called it a mound, or the largest pyramid in the world by volume, all hiding right under the grass and dirt, where they said that the grass and the dirt is preserving the site, where we know that's not true. And then we're also told in Iraq that these tombs have been long buried, preserved, under layers of earth, provide crucial insights into the religious history of the region. Is this not a site that we should all know about? We should all get to see the process of what they're finding or what has been found. Is this not the most interesting thing? Something that would show possibly who was here before us, possibly what we're all doing here, and who built all these structures. It would show what's happened, what our true history really is. Well, these parts of the valley had been sealed off due to the political and religious sensitivity of the site, with access being restricted until recent excavations. Restricted until recent excavations? What is going on? What is this? In the 2000s, after the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime, there was an increase in archaeological activity around the Wadi al-Salam, the biggest cemetery in the world. The Iraqi government, along with Shiite religious groups, began conducting excavations and restoration projects, where we know that restoration is destruction. To reveal more about the historical significance of the site, these excavations were aimed at uncovering the older tombs, the older artifacts from the massive necropolis. We are told that they did this, and then these efforts were often restricted due to the religious context of the site. This would have shredded the narrative, and we all know it. Whatever was found in the 2000s, in my opinion, would have taken their religious and historical narrative and everything that they believed and ripped it right in half. People used to ask, why would they hide this information? And who is they? Well, who is involved in these excavation projects? It clearly states who the they are, telling us that the Iraqi government, along with this religious group, this is the they. This is who they are for this excavation project. These are the people that conducted the excavation and restoration projects in the 2000s. Can you see very clearly now? Aiming to uncover the old world tombs, the old world artifacts, which we know that they did. And then all of these efforts were restricted to all of us due to the religious context of the site, restricted to all of us because of what they found, what it would have meant to their group. You are always free to think whatever you'd like. I am simply sharing what we have found, asking questions that I believe take us closer to the truth. This is all in my opinion, and I state this over and over. All of my episodes are, and always will be, in my opinion. But how much clearer could it get? We know exactly what to look for to unravel the narrative now, and it's only getting more and more obvious that we are correct the further that we go. We know the keys to the game. We understand what to ask, and we know where to look. We're just getting started, especially when we are told that they came back to the site in the 2010s. Again, uncovering older layers of the cemetery, the old world. Uncovering ancient tombs again, and old world artifacts, telling us that the old world was again just over there making pottery. Can you believe how correct we are? We found the pottery clue months ago, and it'll never get old. They give us the pottery, and they have for so long. And they do this so that we stop asking, what else did they find? Going back to the top, where they said they found ancient tombs and artifacts. I don't believe that that was pottery. This is obvious now. They found old world technology. They did not just find some cups and plates. Finding old world texts, yet again, gold, jewelry, and of course personal items. I believe that it is the old world items that were buried with the important figures, just like we've said. It's so clear now, with old world inscribed stones, Sumerian writings suggesting that the area may have been used for burials far earlier than previously thought, as far back as the Sumerian period, where I don't believe the Sumerians were here thousands of years ago. I believe that they were here so much closer to our timeline than what we've all been told, or what is suggested. A massive necropolis, excluding the last 300 years of our timeline, where they've been adding to this old world necropolis. They believe that this site potentially had over 1 million people buried here from the old world. And we have seen this time and time again, where it's most likely so many more, and extends so much further out than what we're being shown. And should we blow everybody's minds today? Let's expose the mainstream narrative and show the world that what we've been taught is controlled. It is molded. It's a molded story that hides evidence of our true past, the truth. Most likely the reason why we're all so confused as to what we're all doing here. I believe that there are groups that have it all, fully understand what this place that we all live is all about. The largest cemetery in the world, stating that there are some claims that certain archaeological finds in the valley, particularly those that could challenge established narratives. Archaeological finds that could challenge established narratives about the region's history that have been concealed or kept away from the public. Are you done with the mainstream history yet? Do you still think they wouldn't lie to you? Should I keep going? Concealed and kept away from the public. All of us. This includes finding ancient manuscripts, artifacts with markings or content that could disrupt the mainstream historical narrative of the Shiite pilgrimage or the early Islamic period. This is what we're being told. We have been told this for years, and it wasn't until now, because of all of you, that we are now able to show this information. We are finally at the point where we can all see so clearly, and we're all okay with hearing the truth. Not only are we okay with it, we actually enjoy it now. Some scholars argue that these artifacts and texts have been deliberately hidden from public view by religious authorities or government bodies. Again, just like we showed. I don't think anyone will ever say to you, you keep saying they. Who is they? It's clear as can be now. Deliberately hidden from public view by religious authorities or government bodies to maintain the religious and political status quo. So if they don't hide this from the public, they're not going to be able to maintain the religious and political status quo. We all understand this now. The presence of mercury deposits in the tombs has been cited as a reason for limiting access to certain areas. And we've seen this excuse in episode 107. So this is the second time in our Off Limits to the Public series that we've seen this, where mercury is being cited as the reason for limiting access to the public. In China at the Terracotta Army, in episode 107. They are blocking us off from the site, stating that the tomb is said to be a grand underground palace filled with treasures and rivers of mercury. Where in Iraq, at this massive necropolis, some believe that this is an excuse to conceal more sensitive findings. So I'll ask all of you, what do you think? Now, the war in Iraq that began in 2003, which was right in the middle of this excavation project, which is interesting in itself. The 2003 Iraq War and the subsequent looting of the National Museum in Baghdad that we saw in episode 85 were significant events. While some artifacts were recovered, many others were either lost or deliberately withheld, with significant findings from places like Wadi al-Salam, have been withheld or are protected under government mandates to prevent them from challenging the mainstream narrative. What was there in the National Museum in Baghdad that would have challenged the mainstream narrative in 2002 that was taken or destroyed in 2003? What did we miss? It's all so interesting and so clear on who is hiding the truth from all of us now. This wasn't just pottery, a couple forks and a spoon. This was texts, tablets, artifacts, and depictions of the past that conflict with current historical accounts and remain under government control, off limits to the public. What a weird thing to do. A trustworthy group would never do this. These items belong to everybody, in my opinion. I believe we should all be able to see what was found. The truth should be available to the public if they want to see it, not the other way around. If we want to know the truth, we should all have that choice. The truth would destroy these groups that benefit from the lie. And this is the reason we are caged into this mindset. The great thing is that we all know the truth for the most part. Whether they want to show it to us or not, the items would prove it. But we know that there was a previous, extremely advanced civilization here, and that their mainstream story is a complete lie. It's 100% molded to benefit this group that blocks the items off from us. It is no longer just for preservation, conservation, or to protect the old world items. The truth is clear. It's just to hide the items from all of us and protect their story. All in my opinion, of course, but I don't think I'm alone at all. Remember, while some artifacts were recovered, many other artifacts were deliberately withheld. What artifacts were there before this event and are no longer there? Should we expose this? Are you ready? Here we go. One major artifact that was once part of the Iraqi National Museum's collection, which is no longer publicly displayed, is the Sumerian King's List, a stone tablet that documented the reigns of kings in ancient Sumer. The Sumerian King's List was an important artifact that provided historical records of rulers and events, and this is no longer there. Again, we were told that these artifacts are being withheld or are protected under government mandates to prevent them from challenging the mainstream narrative, exactly like we've suggested. And we have now located an item that is no longer in the museum, the Sumerian King's List, a list that documents the reigns of kings, some of which span tens of thousands of years. This contradicting traditional views of Sumerian history and the timeline of civilization as understood by mainstream historians. This is unbelievable. Something from the old world that was once on display for us to see in Iraq and is now currently removed from our view, in my opinion, is something that I would trust so much more than anything else we're being told. It's basically an admission that it is the truth. Kings living for thousands of years. We have shown that Gilgamesh found a plant that helped people live forever. What is being hidden from us today? How many people that we think of as public figures know about this technology, and how many of them are using it? How many of them don't die when we are told that they do? I have no idea. But it is very interesting. The presence of rulers with extraordinarily long reigns, documented in the old world texts, sometimes lasting over 40,000 years, poses a challenge to evolving and advancing. It exposes that there's a technology to live so much longer. It poses a challenge to accepted historical and archaeological narratives about the development of early civilizations. This is exactly what we've been saying for years now, where I believe we have concrete evidence that this is being hidden from us without a doubt. Its whereabouts are now unclear. After 2003, during the Iraq War, the Sumerian King's List, this is now gone. And this is incredible. This document would 100% challenge the mainstream historical narrative about the evolution of human societies and the timeline of ancient civilizations, as well as our current civilization. Is this not everything that we've ever wanted to see in this research? Is this not what we've all been waiting for? Could this get any clearer? I believe that this episode is the cherry on top. The Sumerian King's List But I'm gonna tell you right now, if you think that we're all done with this list, if you think that we're all wrapped up here, always remember and never forget that we are just getting started. The Sumerian Kings List, an old world text that was once on display in Iraq, and it's no longer there following the 2003 war. The Sumerian Kings List, it documented the long reigns of kings, some of which spanned tens of thousands of years. And this contradicts traditional views of Sumerian history and the timeline of civilization. This contradicts the mainstream story that we've all been told. The Sumerian Kings List, once here and now gone. So, let's bring it back to life. In order to do this, we have to go back to 2003, where we see that during the Iraq War, 15,000 artifacts were taken from the Iraqi National Museum. 15,000, many of which have never been recovered. Among these items were tablets and inscriptions related to the Sumerian Kings List, noting that some versions of the Kings List from Iraq are no longer accounted for. They were here in 2002 in Iraq in a museum and are now missing. We are told that the most complete version of the Sumerian Kings List is safe and not missing. And that one's located in the Ashmolean Museum, Oxford, England. I don't believe that that was the most complete version, because if it was, we all know that that's the one that would be missing. If the Iraqi version of the Sumerian Kings List was ever digitized, it was never given to the public. There is no widely recognized or accessible digitized version of the Iraqi-held Sumerian Kings List, or any unique version of it that was in the Iraqi National Museum prior to 2003. So not only is it gone, but they also never took a picture of it. Can you believe this? I personally do not. I believe that the photographs are also being withheld from the public. If you are new here, we have proven without a doubt that the mainstream narrative withholds so much information. They withhold sites. They block things off from the public over and over, and it's all to mold the narrative. Because if they didn't do this, the mainstream story, it would have been done a long time ago. If you're on the fence about this and you're new, I suggest going to episode 107, episode 109, and 114. Off Limits to the Public, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. These episodes fully expose this.
On the 13th of April 2003, when I went back to the museum, it was something like as if a hurricane had hit. Completely everything was destroyed. All the documents were on the floor. All the equipments were stolen. And what about the museum itself? It had really a catastrophe. Because the looters were inside the galleries, the looters were in the storerooms. And for me, that was the first time in my life to see a museum been looted in that way. It had been ransacked completely. What they could not take, they smashed. During the fall of Baghdad, and what we saw of these horrible scenes of the looting all over the city, and what happened to the museum, this was not the only thing.
Personally, I believe that this so-called looting in Iraq was just this group. They were going in there and removing the 15,000 items from the public. And they did this, where we also know that there were so many more than 15,000. They were undocumented items. We've seen in the British Museum how they have 7.92 million items that are not being shown to the public. So could you imagine how many items were actually in the Iraqi National Museum? It was a lot more than 15,000. They were undocumented items in terms of being digitized, and they obviously knew this. The truth is always out there. This is a game, in my opinion. There are keys, and there are clues, and we've unraveled so many of them. So let's go deeper. Samuel Noah Kramer, a supposed 1900s expert in Sumerian history and Sumerian language, where he transformed the field of Sumerian history and wrote a book called The Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character, which I'll post the link to this on X. For anybody who wants to read this 385-page book, I'll post the link. This book was written in 1963 and is one of the only surviving documented accounts of the Iraq version of the Sumerian Kings List. And after fully reading it, we have unlocked so much more. Before diving into this book, we have to understand that the Sumerian Kings List tablets that are now a part of the Oxford collection in England were acquired in the 1800s yet again. Our timeline over and over. They were taken from Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, and they're now in England. These excavations were typically funded and directed by institutions in Europe and the United States. And then you have to ask, who was it that went into Iraq in 2003 and took these 15,000 plus items? Can you all remind me? Who went back to Iraq basically 200 years later? Who was this? This country was the most prominent European ally of this country in the Iraq War. The Oxford version of the Sumerian Kings List was found in 1922. I think they thought they found the whole thing and made a huge mistake, because following the Oxford version's discovery, the Iraq version was then discovered. And then just 70 years later, the Iraq version goes missing, and it's gone forever. Stories on how to live forever, or at least for thousands of years. Who would be interested in this kind of technology from the old world? It's very interesting. What a terrible mistake in the 1920s, leaving too soon and allowing Iraq to hold some of the most powerful information in the world. The Sumerian Kings List, with the same two groups involved in the 1920s and the early 2000s. What are the odds? Gilgamesh asks Utnapishtim for the secret to immortality in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He later reveals the existence of a plant that can restore youth. In episode 109, we located the Epic of Gilgamesh. We know that it's located in the British Museum. It was transported there and is kept stored away. And today, we find out that Samuel Noah Kramer's 1963 book, The Gilgamesh Stories, are discussed in the Iraq version of the Sumerian Kings List so many times. On page 60, we see that they were doing something in the 1960s. According to the Kings List, Gilgamesh was a ruler who became the supreme hero of Sumerian myth and legend, where we know at this point that these aren't myths and they are not legends. These are literal text from the old world, in my opinion. Gilgamesh became a hero par excellence of the ancient world, the old world, the previous civilization, with an endless drive for fame, glory, and immortality, to such an extent that he has been taken by modern scholars to be a legendary figure rather than a real man and ruler. Modern scholars saying that he was a legend and not real, where we know that he was real because they were looking for him in the 1960s. Going on to say, although there is some hope that the excavations now being conducted in Erech may uncover some sooner or later the major city in Sumer, present-day Iraq, the location that Gilgamesh was said to rule. In 1955, they found the Tumul inscription, a 10-line inscription that explains Immortality and Gilgamesh both lived during the same time. Archaeologists have already discovered that Immortality was a real individual. They already know that he was real and not a myth. The Tumul inscription found in 1955 proves that Gilgamesh was not a mythical character. They lived at the same time, and these texts are not myth. It's clear. If you were trying to hide the true history of this place that we all live, you would go take the Sumerian Kings List from Iraq in 2003. Clearly, There was something in there that would ruin their mainstream story hour. Within this text, Samuel Noah Kramer tells us something very interesting. Something that goes back to episode 61, the land of Mu, telling us that there was a place called Dilmun, a land of deathlessness and immortality, where this character was transplanted to Dilmun once the gods had granted him immortality. Again, not knowing where Dilmun is located, where I believe that there is more land, that we are simply not shown. Dilmun was looked upon by the Sumerians as a blessed paradise land. It appears to have been Enki's home ground. Indeed, it seems to have been, or possibly still is today, the place where all of gods meet. Incredible. The Sumerian Kings List. It's becoming so clear. And it's no wonder this text was taken from our view in Iraq. Could you imagine if this is real? A real place that is here, where I believe it is. And we're not being told about it. If all of these things that are written about the old world are true, that Gilgamesh was real, the Sumerians, all of this would be incredible. We find their texts, and time again, these texts are taken from our view. So-called looted. Could you imagine if there's a land that is pure, bright, and a holy land that is free from sickness, death, and aging? It's mentioned multiple times in texts from the old world. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the myth of Enki and Ninhursag, often referred to as a sort of Eden-like garden. Could you even imagine if this place is still here and it's not being shown to us today? I can. This is the location of the Sumerian Kings List in Oxford, a portion of the story in my opinion. We are told that the weld-blundell prism, an 8-inch high prism, is the most extensive version of the Sumerian Kings List, containing 4 sides with 2 columns on each side, listing the rulers from before the flood, stating that the kingship had descended from heaven. This is all a myth. It's all a legend. No, the King's List is inscribed on cuneiform tablets, with the Iraq version that was lost in 2003 likely included additional details. I believe what was found after the Oxford version was just a continuation from the book that was found originally. I have a feeling that they thought they found the whole thing, and then they took it to Oxford, England, and then Iraq found the rest of the King's List with additional information. So they didn't have the full story in Oxford, and they had to go back and get it in 2003, as well as so much more that they found at the same site, taking or destroying 15,000 plus artifacts from the old world. But I believe that they have the rest of the book now. I don't think that there was just multiple copies of the King's List just laying around. Again, all of this taking place in the 18 and 1900s, and even carrying into the 2000s. So you can see how new our civilization really is. The finders are still finding things. If you've seen all the episodes so far, you're going to see the pattern so clearly. You'll know that a reset took place, and our civilization was just running around finding things in the 18 and 1900s from the old world. It was just who could find it first, and those would be the leaders of this timeline. The people that could find the technology from the old world, the texts, the information, the tablets, the technology. They never documented they found these sites or texts in the 15 or 1600s. We've never seen it to this point. Over hours and hours of documented research, it has never happened. On page 328, titled E Sumerian Kings List, it goes on to tell us what was on the Iraq version, the one that is now gone forever, the one that no picture remains of it. Samuel Noah Kramer, he told us in 1963 that the Sumerian Kings List told all of us that Eridu Alalim reigned for 28,800 years as king. Alalgur reigned for 36,000 years, with 3 more individuals reigning for 108,000 years, and a grand total of 8 kings. spanning a total of 241,200 years, with a flood then taking place. This is all documented on Old World texts, on the tablets that he saw, and they are now gone. And after the flood, the kings didn't reign nearly as long. 324 years right here, and 900 years right here. It's still much longer than us today, but nowhere near the pre-flood individuals. And this is where we can show that Gilgamesh was very real, and he was much closer to our timeline than what we could have ever imagined. Seeing that according to the Sumerian kings list, Gilgamesh reigned for 126 years. Something changed within the last 1,000 years in this place that we live. Something massive. People were bigger. They lived so much longer. And these stories that have been removed from us prove it, in my opinion. The tablets show locations that are still here, that give you immortality. The tablets show the truth about this place that we live. They show who was here, who was powerful, and they gave us the old world technology back. These tablets are being hidden from the public, in my opinion. They have been looted by the exact same groups, just 70 years apart. The Sumerian Kings list isn't just history. It is a roadmap. It's a key. It's proof that the old world existed and that the old world was far greater than they really want us to know. And I wonder if they didn't want us to know because they just wanted to keep it all for themselves. You tell me. The Sumerian Kings list and Genesis, they were either written by the same individuals, or one was looking at the other's work, or they were working together. But one thing is undeniable. Both talk about the flood as a cataclysmic event that resets human history, with divine beings playing a central role. Both Genesis and the Sumerian Kings list talk about a golden age, where humans lived under different conditions and lived for so much longer than we've ever seen, just like we've talked about today. And this happened so much closer to our timeline than what we're being told, in my opinion. Both texts talk about the Garden of Eden, or Dilmun. This is a place that humans had immortality. Both stories ending the exact same way. Even the characters play the same exact roles with different names. Noah and Utnapishtim, both are chosen to survive the flood, and both are warned and helped to survive. The Sumerian Kings list and the book of Genesis are very similar, suggesting a possible connection, with one thing being very clear. Both describe the flood as a cataclysmic event that resets human history, with divine beings playing a central role. Something happened, exactly like we've talked about for years now. A reset, and I don't believe it was thousands of years ago. I believe it was so much closer to our timeline than we could have ever imagined before. These stories give us incredible insight into our true history, as well as our questions about life and our purpose, with one being removed in 2003. This story is not just a random clay tablet. This was so much more important than that. It was stolen from our view. It held stories that are similar to Genesis. Could you imagine if Genesis was taken from us? Parts of it were removed, and we were given the excuse that it was just looted. Stories of the past turning out to be much more factual than we ever realized. Excavation projects taking place, trying to locate these individuals that are supposedly just myths, finding their texts, and probably so much more. We are going to continue to look deeper. We are going to continue to question everything. We are never going to stop researching for the truth, because the past is not gone. It is simply being hidden, but the truth is always out there, just waiting for us to find it.